The loudest person in the room is almost always the most insecure. Look around at who's constantly sharing their opinions, demanding attention, and attempting to control everyone and everything around them. Behind all that noise is usually someone terrified to face themselves. Someone running from the silence where true growth happens. I'm going to share something that will make many uncomfortable. Your constant need to speak, to be heard, to be right, to change others. It's not strength. It's the clearest evidence that you're avoiding the most important work of your life. The moment your life changed forever, was it loud or was it quiet? When we think about transformation, we often imagine fireworks, epiphanies with lightning bolts from the sky, or dramatic moments where everything suddenly makes sense. But that's rarely how real change happens. Real change happens in silence, in those moments when you're alone with your thoughts, in that space between your ears that nobody else can access, in the quiet decisions you make when nobody's watching. Let's talk about silence. Not just the absence of noise, but the profound power of turning inward and focusing solely on yourself. Most of us spend our entire lives in a state of reaction. Someone criticizes us, we defend ourselves. Someone achieves something, we compare ourselves. Someone shares an opinion, we feel compelled to voice our own. We're constantly performing, constantly reacting, constantly living in response to the world around us, rather than creating our own reality from within. What would happen if you simply stopped reacting, stopped explaining yourselves, stopped seeking external validation, stopped comparing your journey to others? What if you focused entirely on yourself and stayed silent while doing so? The truth is, most people will never experience the profound transformation that comes from this practice because it's uncomfortable. It's much easier to blame circumstances, to criticize others, to get caught in the drama of everyday life than it is to look inward and take complete responsibility for your own existence. But you're not here for easy, are you? You're here because something inside you knows there's more. Something inside you recognizes that the path to true freedom, to genuine peace and fulfillment, isn't found in changing others or changing your circumstances. It's found in changing yourself. Who would you be if nobody was watching? If there was no social media to post on, no one to impress, no external validation to seek, who would you actually be? What would matter to you? What would you do with your precious time on this earth? Many people spend decades climbing ladders, only to realize they've placed them against, they achieve everything society told them would bring happiness. The career, the possessions, the status, only to feel empty inside because they never took the time to discover what truly matters to them. Focusing on yourself isn't selfish. In fact, it's the most selfless thing you can do. Because when you become whole within yourself, when you find peace and fulfillment that doesn't depend on external circumstances, you show up differently in the world. You become a lighthouse rather than a drowning swimmer constantly seeking rescue. Think about the people who have most positively influenced your life. Were they people who were constantly seeking approval, constantly reacting, constantly trying to control everything around them? Or were they people who had a quiet confidence, a sense of inner peace, a certainty about who they were regardless of external circumstances? The greatest gift you can give to the world is your own transformation. But here's what they don't tell you about transformation. It happens in silence, in solitude, in those moments when you're willing to sit with yourself and face the truth of who you are, both the light and the shadow. Most people avoid silence because silence forces us to confront ourselves. In silence, we can no longer distract ourselves from our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own truth. The constant noise of modern life, social media, news, gossip, drama, serves as the perfect distraction from the inner work that true transformation requires. But what if instead of fearing silence, you embraced it? What if instead of running from solitude, you welcomed it as the birthplace of your greatest self-discovery? There's a remarkable thing that happens when you focus entirely on your own growth, your own healing, your own transformation without feeling the need to announce it to the world, without seeking validation for your journey, without needing others to understand or approve of your path. You become unshakable. When your sense of self, your peace, your fulfillment comes from within, No external force can truly disrupt it. You become like a mountain. Storms may rage around you, but you remain unmoved, solid in your foundation. I once heard a story about a spiritual teacher and a student walking through a crowded market. The student is overwhelmed by all the noise, the people, the chaos. He turned to his teacher and asked, "How do you maintain your peace in the midst of all this noise?" The teacher handed the student a coin and said, "Go find me something in this market that..." The student wandered through the market for nearly an hour, looking at various items, asking prices, calculating in his mind. Finally, he returned to the teacher and said, "I've looked everywhere. Nothing costs exactly this amount." The teacher smiled and asked, "During your search, did you notice the noise?" So the student realized that during his focus search, the noise had completely faded from his awareness. It wasn't that the noise had stopped. It was that his focus had shifted so completely that the noise no longer registered in his consciousness. This is what happens when you truly focus on yourself and your own growth. The opinions of others, the judgments, the noise of the world, they begin to fade into the background. Not because they cease to exist, but because they become increasingly irrelevant to your journey. I want you to consider something that might feel uncomfortable. Most of the drama in your life exists because you keep engaging with it. Most of the emotional turmoil you experience comes not from events themselves, but from your reaction to those events. Most of the conflicts you face persist because you keep trying to convince others of your perspective instead of simply living your truth. What would happen if, when someone criticized you, instead of defending yourself, you simply acknowledged their perspective and continued on your path? What would happen if, when faced with drama, instead of engaging, you simply observed it without feeling compelled to participate? What would happen if, instead of trying to change others, you directed all that energy toward changing yourself? Your life would transform. Not overnight, but gradually, profoundly, and permanently. There's a famous saying that your life changes when you change. Not when others change. Not when circumstances change, but when you change. When you shift your perception, when you alter your responses, when you transform your relationship with yourself and with reality. Let me tell you what happens when you truly commit to focusing on yourself while staying silent about it. First, people won't understand. They might even criticize you. We live in a world that celebrates external validation. That rewards those who promote themselves, that values appearance over substance. When you choose to work on yourself quietly, without seeking praise or recognition, it confuses people. They might misinterpret your silence as weakness, your focus on self as selfishness, your unwillingness to engage in drama as apathy. There's the beautiful part. The misunderstanding doesn't matter. Not because you don't care about them, but because you understand that their perception is based on their own level of consciousness, their own journey, their own understanding, and that has nothing to do with you or your path. Second, you'll begin to notice how much energy you've been spending on things that don't actually serve your growth or happiness. You'll realize how much mental and emotional space you've dedicated to worrying about others' opinions, to defending yourself, to engaging in conflicts that ultimately change nothing. And when you reclaim that energy and redirect it toward your own growth, third, your relationships will change. Some might fall away, and that's okay. Others will deepen in ways you never imagined possible. When you stop trying to control others, when you stop needing them to validate your choices, when you stop engaging in the surface-level dramas that characterize so many interactions, you create space for authentic connection. True connection isn't found in agreeing on everything or in trying to change each other. It's found in the courage to be authentically yourself while allowing others to be authentically themselves. It's found in the willingness to grow together rather than trying to fix each other. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, you'll develop an unshakable inner peace. A quiet confidence that comes not from external achievements or validation, but from knowing yourself deeply and living in alignment with your truth. This kind of peace cannot be taken from you because it doesn't depend on anything outside of you. Think about how much of your stress, your anxiety, your suffering comes from trying to control what others think of you, trying to manage their perceptions, trying to gain their approval. Now imagine releasing all of that, not in a way that's uncaring or disconnected, but in a way that honors your own journey while allowing others the dignity of theirs. The poet Rumi wrote, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself. This is the essence of focusing on yourself and staying silent. It's the recognition that the only person you can truly change is yourself, and that this change, when approached with sincere commitment, has the power to transform everything. What would your life look like if for the next year you directed all the energy you currently spend on trying to change others, on seeking validation, on engaging in conflict and drama? What if you directed all of that energy toward your own growth instead? What books would you read? What limiting beliefs would you challenge? What new skills would you develop? What habits would you change? What fears would you face? What dreams would you pursue? The transformation would be extraordinary. Not because the world around you would suddenly bend to your wishes, but because you would no longer need it to. Your happiness, your peace, your sense of fulfillment would no longer depend on external circumstances aligning perfectly. They would arise from within, from your relationship with yourself, from your commitment to your own evolution. There's a powerful concept called the gap and the gain. Most people live in the gap, constantly measuring the distance between where they are and where they want to be, between what they have and what they want to have. This creates a perpetual sense of lack, of not enoughness, of falling short. But when you focus on yourself, truly focus on your own growth, rather than comparing yourself to others, you begin to live in the gain. You recognize and celebrate the distance between where you were and where you are now. You acknowledge your progress, your resilience, your courage in facing challenges and continuing forward despite setbacks. Living in the gain doesn't mean you stop growing or become complacent. It means you approach your growth from a place of self-compassion and awareness rather than harsh judgment and comparison. It means you recognize that the journey itself is the destination, that growth is not a means to an end, but a way of being. And here's something remarkable about staying silent while focusing on yourself. Your transformation speaks louder than words ever could. When you stop telling people how they should live and simply focus on living your best life, you become living inspiration. Your example carries more weight, more authenticity, more transformative power than any advice you could possibly give those who talk endlessly about growth, about spirituality, about transformation while their lives remain chaotic and unchanged. And those who say little but whose presence, whose energy, whose way of moving through the world inspires us to be better simply by witnessing it. Which would you rather be? The practice of focusing on yourself and staying silent about it requires tremendous courage. It requires the willingness to face yourself honestly, to acknowledge both your light and your shadow, to take full responsibility for your life without blaming circumstances or other people for your challenges. It requires the courage to sit in silence and listen to your own inner wisdom rather than constantly seeking advice and validation from others. It requires the courage to walk your own path, even when that path looks different from what society expects or what others think you should do. It requires the courage to let go of being right, to release the need to defend yourself, to abandon the ego's desperate clutching at control and certainty in favor of growth and authenticity. But this courage is within you. You wouldn't be drawn to this message if some part of you didn't already recognize its truth, if some part of you wasn't ready to embark on this journey of silent self-transformation. The world doesn't need more noise. It doesn't need more people shouting their opinions, criticizing others, engaging in endless debates that change few minds and even fewer hearts. The world needs people who have done the inner work, who have faced themselves honestly, who have transformed their own consciousness, and who move through life with presence, compassion, and integrity. The most profound changes in human history have often begun with individuals who focus first on their own transformation. They didn't set out to change the world. They set out to change themselves. And in doing so, they created ripples that eventually became waves of transformation reaching far beyond what they could have imagined. This isn't about withdrawing from the world or becoming indifferent to the suffering of others. On the contrary, it's about showing up in the world with greater presence, greater compassion, greater wisdom, qualities that can only emerge from sincere inner work. When you focus on yourself and stay silent about it, you're not retreating from life. You're preparing yourself to engage with life more fully, more authentically, more effectively than ever before. Think about times in your own life when you've been truly influenced by someone else. Was it when they lectured you, criticized you, told you what to do? Or was it when you witnessed their example, when you saw the results of their way of being, when you felt the quality of their presence? We influence others not primarily through our words, but through our being. Who we are speaks so loudly that others can barely hear what we say. When you commit to your own transformation, without needing to announce it to the world, you become a living invitation for others to discover their own path to growth. There's a beautiful paradox here. By focusing entirely on your own growth rather than trying to change others, you actually increase your positive impact on the world. By staying silent rather than constantly sharing your opinions and insights, you allow your transformed presence to speak volumes. Most people never discover this paradox because they're too busy trying to change everyone around them, too busy reacting to circumstances, too busy seeking external validation to discover the incredible power of silent self-transformation. But you're not most people, are you? You're someone who senses there's a deeper way to live, a more authentic way to grow, a more profound way to impact the world around you. You're someone who recognizes that true power doesn't come from controlling others, but from mastering yourself. The practice of focusing on yourself and staying silent is simple, but it isn't easy. Our entire society is structured around externalization, around sharing, announcing, proclaiming, debating. We're constantly asked for our opinions, our reactions, our thoughts on everything from global events to personal dramas. Swimming against this current requires vigilance. It requires the constant choice to turn inward rather than react outward. It requires the discipline to remain silent when every cultural impulse pushes you to speak, to defend. For the next week, commit to absolute silence about your own growth journey. No posting about your insights on social media. No telling friends about your latest revelation. No giving advice unless explicitly asked. No defending yourself when criticized. No trying to change anyone else's mind or behavior. Instead, direct all that energy inward. Notice what arises when you feel the impulse to share, to defend, to advise, to control. And choose instead to remain silent and focus on your own response, your own growth, your own transformation. Notice how much energy you reclaim when you're no longer trying to manage others' perceptions of you. Notice how much clarity emerges when you're no longer constantly seeking external validation for your path. Notice how much more present you become when you're not constantly formulating responses or defenses in your mind. This experiment might feel uncomfortable at first. You might notice how much of your identity is wrapped up in being seen a certain way, in having others validate your choices, in feeling like you're making a difference through your words rather than your being. But if you persist, you'll begin to discover a freedom that few people ever experience. The freedom that comes from needing nothing outside yourself to feel complete, worthy, and at peace. The freedom that comes from being so focused on your own growth that the opinions and judgments of others become increasingly irrelevant. This is not about disconnection. It's about the deepest form of connection. Connection to yourself, to your own wisdom, to your own authentic path. And from this place of self-connection, you'll find that your connections with others naturally deepen and become more meaningful as well. When you're no longer seeking validation, when you're no longer trying to control how others perceive you, when you're no longer engaging in surface-level dramas and conflicts, you create space for authentic relationships based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than ego needs and hidden agendas. Focusing on yourself and staying silent doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent to injustice. It doesn't mean you never speak up or take action in the world. It means that when you do speak or act, it comes from a place of inner clarity and alignment rather than reaction, defensiveness, or the need to be right. It means that your words and actions carry the weight of your being, the authenticity of your lived experience, rather than being empty rhetoric or reactive responses. It means that you engage with the world from a place of wisdom rather than wound, from compassion rather than judgment. The path of silent self-transformation isn't popular in our noisy world that celebrates self-promotion and external achievement above inner growth. But this path has been walked by the wisest among us throughout history, those who understood that true change always begins within and ripples outward, those who recognize that Our being influences far more powerfully than our doing or our saying. As you walk this path, you'll discover that the greatest service you can offer to the world isn't fixing others or solving every problem you encounter. It's becoming the most authentic, most conscious, most present version of yourself, and allowing that presence to naturally inspire and elevate those around you. You'll discover that the most profound revolution isn't the one that happens in the streets or in the halls of power, but the one that happens in human consciousness, one person at a time, beginning with your own. So I invite you to choose this path. So focus entirely on your own growth, your own healing, your own transformation, and to do so quietly, without announcement, without seeking validation or recognition for your journey. I invite you to reclaim all the energy you've been spending on trying to change others, on defending yourself, on seeking external approval, and to redirect that energy toward becoming the person you know in your heart you're capable of being. I invite you to discover the extraordinary power of silence, not as an escape from the world, but as a gateway to engaging with the world from a place of depth, authenticity, and wisdom. This path isn't easy, but nothing of true value ever is. And the rewards, inner peace that can't be shaken by external circumstances, authentic connections that nourish rather than drain you, the quiet joy of living in alignment with your deepest truth. These rewards far outweigh any temporary discomfort you might experience along the way. The world changes when you change, not when others change, not when circumstances change, but when you change, when you transform your perception, when you shift your responses, when you elevate your consciousness. And this change, this profound, lasting transformation, happens not through loud proclamations or desperate attempts to fix everything around you, but through the quiet, committed focus on your own growth while having the courage to stay silent and let your transformed presence speak for itself. So take a deep breath, turn inward, and begin this journey. The journey of focusing on yourself and staying silent. The journey that leads not to self-absorption or disconnection, but to the most profound connection and contribution you could possibly make. The journey that reveals, step by step, breath by breath, moment by moment, your own extraordinary capacity for growth, for healing, for transformation, and through this revelation helps illuminate the path for others, not through your words, but through your being. Let your life be your message. Let your transformation be your testimony. Let your presence be your contribution to a world that desperately needs more people who have found the courage to focus on their own growth and the wisdom to stay silent while doing so. Every great journey begins with a single step. Let this be yours. What I'm suggesting isn't easy in a world that celebrates noise, constant sharing, debating, and proving. But consider this: the true masters of life might be those who work silently on themselves without needing to announce their journey. When you focus entirely inward without seeking external validation, something remarkable happens. The energy you once scattered across defending your positions, seeking approval, and trying to change others becomes concentrated entirely on genuine growth. This creates a gravitational shift in your presence that others feel without understanding why. People will begin to notice something different about you. They'll sense your unshakable calm amid chaos. They'll recognize your compassionate boundaries. They'll witness your strange freedom from needing their approval. Your transformation becomes undeniable evidence of what's possible when someone commits to their own evolution without distraction. This silent path requires tremendous courage. The courage to face yourself honestly, to sit with uncomfortable truths, to work through shadows that most people spend lifetimes avoiding. But I believe this courage already exists. You wouldn't be drawn to this message if some part of you didn't recognize its truth. The most powerful changes throughout history have often begun with individuals who focused first on their own transformation rather than trying to transform the world around them. Their changed presence became the catalyst that inspired others to embark on their own. This isn't about withdrawing from life or becoming indifferent to others. On the contrary, by focusing on your own growth while staying silent about it, you develop the depth, wisdom, and authenticity needed to show up more fully in every relationship and circumstance. For 1 week, commit to absolute silence about your growth journey. No social media posts about your insights. No telling friends about your latest revelation. No giving advice unless explicitly asked. Instead, direct all that energy inward. Notice how much clarity emerges when you're no longer constantly seeking external validation. Notice how much more present you become when you're not formulating responses or defenses in your mind. Notice the freedom that comes from needing nothing outside yourself to feel complete. The greatest revolution isn't the one that happens in the streets or corridors of power, but the one that happens in human consciousness, one person at a time, beginning with your own. By reclaiming all the energy you've been spending on trying to change others and redirecting it toward becoming the person you know in your heart you're capable of being, you become a living invitation for others. Let your life be your message. Let your transformation be your testimony. Let your presence be your contribution to a world that desperately needs more people who have found the courage to focus on their own growth and the wisdom to stay silent while doing so. In the quiet space of your own commitment to growth, you'll discover a power that no external achievement could ever provide. The power of alignment with your deepest truth.